This is Chris with All Guns 101, and this is a Ruger Mini 14 tip. My scope I mounted myself, bore sighted, did everything, get it ready. Went out coyote hunting today, and after firing a few shots, about some misses, and just double checking my zeros, I realized, I don't know if you can see it or not. Do you see that? Maybe I can try a different angle here, or you can hear it. The scope, especially the front, has come loose. And I did hear about this on many reviews, is that if you don't mount your rings 100% level, they will fight and they won't seat right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull off the scope. Basically I have to start from scratch. Instead of, these rings came with an Allen key. I believe it's a Torque 10 is the size of it. So we're going to loosen all these. And I'm going to rotate the camera, or I'm actually going to keep it where it is. It just might be easier for you guys to see what I have to do here. Pull off the back ring, and just make sure that when you reassemble, the very important aspect here is to make sure that your tops of your rings, they are mated. So they're made to go with the backs. Your front is made. To my knowledge, I wouldn't suggest rotating or orienting them any differently. I would suggest keeping them the way that you got them when they were together. So that's why I'm keeping them in the same position. I'm setting them aside in the same order. So we're just going to loosen all these screws here. I don't know why they chose Torques, to be honest. Personally, I do prefer Allens. Maybe I'm going to switch them out eventually, just for simplicity and making life a hell of a lot easier. The scope I have mounted on my Ruger is the Legend HD from Bushnell. You know what? It's a decent scope. It's mil-dot. It should be more than fine for what I need. But right now, what we need is, I'm just going to do a dry fit, because they should line up perfect with all the holes if you didn't screw this up at some point, or if I didn't. Yeah, they seem to line up. There's no extra space. Everything is nice and tight. So I'm going to move those off. And as you can tell, I should not be able to loosen that with my fingers. As you can tell, it does have a beaver tail system, is what I'm going to call that. I'm not sure the actual name. So that would lock in on your front, and that is your side. And once you tighten it down, it cramps on. So I'm going to open this to the maximum here, just to give me a bit more playroom. And the same with the front. I'm going to show you what I mean by that. And to be honest, this is a very smart mounting system. You really can't go wrong. So let's go for a zoom. Maybe it'll autofocus. Autofocus? I definitely need to get myself a new camera. Sorry, guys. So you see, you have your beaver tail. Those I should have covered. Don't mind the front. I know it's not as nice. Actually, when I got it, the Picatinny rail system they have for this sheared one of the bolts, and then I had to drill it out myself. So it's not the best job. What I'm going to do, personally, I use CLP. It's getting very hard to find in Canada due to the health risks, I presume, because it is very cancerous and all the good stuff. And I'm going to open up a patch here quick. Let's grab a patch. I don't have any rags with me, so I'm going to use my 308 patches. To be honest, eBay, I got over 1,000 patches, and they're going to last me the lifetime of my gun. So we're going to take a little bit of CLP, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the straw, actually. CLP, it's a very good cleaner. It's a foaming cleaner. I find it's one of the best cleaners I've ever used for all my firearm needs, a handgun, everything else. It seems to work real well. So let me put, I'm losing my mind. Here we go. So let's get a little dab. And that's what I mean. I don't know if you see it or not. It's a very foamy uh, system. It cleans very well, I find. Probably one of the best systems I've used. And most of my firearms still look brand new on the inside, the internals, because I am so meticulous. So I'm just going to put a little oil in here also. Barely touching the can. Put that over my drip tray. I'm just going to pat down the excess because, you know, we don't need it too oily. So very simply here, as you see on this side, once you start tightening it down, it's going to lock in. On the sides here, you have your teeth. Oh boy. Right there. Don't mind the fat finger. Same on the opposite side. No, I'm going to lose the webcam. There we are. So, I'm going to set it loosely in place. Try to keep my ugly mug out of the camera. So we have the front. Front has been seated. Now we're just going to slowly tighten that. While I'm going to suggest wiggling, because you know what? It won't position itself 100%. But right there, loose now. I'm not going to over tighten. But you see, I already picked up all the slack by hand. No need for any tightness. That's just with the fingertips. So I'm just going to do is I'm just going to give it another half turn, and I'm going to let that one sit for a minute. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount the front one. Same idea. A little bit of oil. Oop. Once again, I got a little too excited on this. So we'll do lots of oil. Same on the mating surface. Since this is all stainless, stainless is a very funny metal. It's not smooth like most steels. It's actually textured. Yes, I know some of you might say I'm wrong, but I've machined and I've worked with actual different steels, so I do know a thing or two about stainless. And what happens is people who aren't experienced, they end up breaking drill bits, taps, and everything else in the material because it binds up like butter. It's a very soft metal. So let's get that going here. And here we are. Lots of oil once again. Don't need to over oil it, but I would suggest a good heavy dosage. And we're going to do the same. We're going to snug it up and rock it while we do so. Because right there, I just felt myself get a nice big gap. Here we are. And already, just finger tight, that is very solid. So what I'm going to do next is grab the scope. I'm going to use the scope as my buffer zone, we'll say. And I'm going to go get a laser or a level just to figure out how level I am. We know height-wise, more than likely that's me, because according to this, now my gun, I'm going to level it in all ways and shapes and possible. So I'm using the tipped in best gun device I should say here. Sorry about that. Let me just lift this up here. Everything is so new, nothing really wants to move for me. So I'm going to pull that forward. And we have a few more inches to go. It doesn't have to be 100% exact, but close enough so when we level our crosshairs, we know we're 100% level. Because it doesn't make the biggest difference, but it does make it an easier sight picture when you do have a level scope. So let's bring it up a little more, and right there. According to that, with the scope on the gun, my height now is level. So I'm going to pull my scope back a little bit because I like it a little further back, and now we're going to check left and right. So as you can tell, I'm way too far. And what I want to do is, this is just a rough. I might actually use the laser bore set I own just to double check, make sure I'm still good. So now I'm going to grab my rings, get them positioned. I'm just going to check the gaps on them. Very important to check your gap because when you tighten these down, you want to make sure while tightening that you apply even pressure. See, I got the same amount of play, I can tell, on either side. So I'm going to do this free-handed by now until I get my torque screwdriver. So back we are. I found out some torque specs. People are saying between 15 to 20 pounds, inch pounds, I believe. Unfortunately, my inch-pound screwdriver is from 50 to 70 for basically mounting stocks, not like this. This is the Hoke stock. So what you're going to do basically is just snug it all up where it feels tight, but you don't want to actually damage the center. So you're just going to snug them all up. Realistically, these should never move. There's not much play on it, and for the bases, you could have snugged it up before you mounted your scope. Personally speaking, I snugged them up finger tight. I didn't shoot the gun, so I know that it's not going to move. They're going to stay very tight. As you saw, if I wanted to, I could have picked up the gun itself. From there, these are all nice and snug. So now with a nice big flathead, get that in frame. It's a dirty rusted flathead. We're just going to tighten until you can't really turn. Don't use anything that is not intended as a tool. So I mean, don't use pliers or a butter knife. You might hurt yourself. Now that snugged up real tight. Give it a good once over. Personally, just give it a little bit nice and tight. They're not going anywhere. And that is how you mount a scope on Ruger bases. I'm sure there's other videos who can do this faster. This is my first attempt, so we are learning this together. Stay tuned and please subscribe.